Marissa will get to that in 1 sec. Okay. Just going to share my screen. Okay, everybody. So as I've already said, Happy New Year. I'm very happy to see you guys again, even though I'm not actually seeing you guys again. So I just want to go over a couple details of what we're going to be doing this week. But I also want to make sure that you guys hear it from me first, that I want to support you guys this week and get over all the anxieties you might have about remote learning. Let's just get it done and get her over with. So here's some facts. Everything I'm going to outline in this presentation is already on my main website. Some of you may have encountered it, and you guys should have all already received an email from me last week with a survey to fill out to prepare you for remote learning this week. Okay, so that should have come to you guys last week, that email, and I just got to change one more attendance. Leah is now present. Okay. And and now one more. Sorry, guys. Damien, I'm now going to mark as present. Okay, so as I was saying, everything I'm going to go over is on the main page of my website. That survey I sent to you guys last week, if you haven't filled it out yet, you should do so. If you couldn't find the email, then I'll just show you real quick. If you go to my website, Mr. Walks, and just go to the main page of my website, so just mrwalks.wordpress.com. Happy New Year. So for those of you who are having trouble getting into the Teams meeting this morning, this link to the Teams meeting will be there all week. So that, I think, is the easiest way, to just go there, click the link, and get into the Teams meeting that way. It's going to be there all week. And every class I record, I'm going to put the recording, a link to the recording underneath there. That's my plan at this point. As far as the survey goes, you just go a little bit further down, and that's where you can connect to the survey. All the survey is designed to do is to check to make sure you're technically ready. Oh, one more person to admit, one more attendance to change. And let me just change Rudra's attendance. And there we go. Okay, so the survey is just to basically get you guys to see if you're having any technical troubles getting connected, because obviously doing computer science remotely, you're going to need some software at home. You're going to need, as Marissa already pointed out, maybe some templates to get started and all that stuff. So I want to make sure you're at least ready for all that. And that's what the purpose of the survey was for, was to just sort of get you underway. Now, I'm going to go through a lot of that as we get started today, but I just wanted you to have that survey to get a feel for what you need to do to get connected today. Okay. Oh, let me just back up one thing. Last thing I have on this slide to share with you guys, I am super optimistic that this will be the only week of remote learning. Now, I can't predict the future. I have no idea if that's the case, that you know, this remote learning will go into next week. But I'm going to use this language all week, that that 1 week from now, I'm going to see you guys all sitting in those chairs over there, back in the classroom. Now, I don't know what the future is, but I'm going to use that language to be positive towards next week. And if things change during the week, then we'll adjust. But that's what I'm going to go with right now. Okay, I got to make one more attendance adjustment. Aiden, I'm now marked you present. All right. Okay. Whatever happens, we'll deal with it. Okay. Here's how this week is going to go for you guys. Obviously, we have a Teams meeting all week from 11 a.m. to 11:50 a.m. for 50 minutes, okay? The school, as you got in probably a letter from the school, requires attendance. It does say you should also have your camera on, and thank you for those who are. I'm not really going to stress about that, because that doesn't tend up eating up bandwidth as well. If we get into a discussion phase, you're absolutely welcome to put your camera on and stuff. It's a little more personal. I think it's nice to see you guys, especially without masks now. Basically, what I want to do is something very similar to what we were going to do anyways this week. So what I did is, if you look at the slide there, that's a screen capture of the calendar that we set up way back in November. And actually, let me just jump over to that calendar. This is actually that calendar. Way back in November, we set up this calendar, and we've been using it all through December, all through the last week of November, and we had planned for it all the way to the end of the semester. So I don't see it as radically that different. I mean, there's going to be a couple adjustments, especially for the 40S students, but we'll adjust with that. We already made some adjustments even before winter break. We canceled some quizzes, we adjusted some stuff. So we can do that. We can get things back online. But I just wanted to show you that's the semester that's left. And so what I am planning for this week is to do graphics examples all week, okay? I want you guys to know that that's what I'm going to be doing all week, is I'm going to be doing graphics examples all week. None of this is required for your mark. So nothing I do this week that you guys can follow along with is a required assignment for your mark. What I want these graphics examples to be is set up for a final project. They could actually become the final project if you want, okay? So best case scenario for you guys is to follow along doing the examples at home with me. I think that's the best case scenario. This is because, as you guys know now in computer science, I mean, you can listen to me all day long. You can read PowerPoints or PDFs that I give you. You can watch videos of me doing the code, but I don't think that's the best way to learn. I think the best way to learn is to actually do it with me. So that engages auditory learning, visual learning, and perhaps in computer science, the most important, kinesthetic learning, learning by doing. So that's why I'm going to recommend doing these examples with me. And I'll just skip ahead to the last point on this slide. I know for you 40S students, a lot of you didn't get to do graphics last year because of COVID and because of remote learning. So I think this is going to be valuable to everybody to do these examples, okay? Now, I also know that for you 40S students, we were in the middle of the collections unit. We didn't finish it. Let's just put that on hold for now. We'll make a decision either later this week or next week as to what we do with collections. For now, let's just forget about it. Let's focus on doing graphics and graphical user interfaces, because I think that's what you guys are going to want to do moving forward with a final project, okay? So I also realize it's going to be technically challenging for some of you to do these examples with me. Already in the survey, I saw at least one of you isn't able to install NetBeans at home for whatever reason, okay? Or when I do these examples over Teams with you guys, maybe I'll go a little too quickly. And unlike being in class, you can't quickly signal to me that you're not really following along with the example, okay? So know this is why I'm recording the meetings, so that you can always go back, slow down the video, and do the example along with me. But you also know from this whole course that anything I do in class, I'm going to be putting on GitHub, so you guys can have the code and use the code as well. But that doesn't, I think, excuse you from how important I think it is to do these examples, okay? You can go, well, yeah, why should I do it? He's recording it and he's going to put the code on GitHub. That doesn't teach you, right? Like that doesn't help you learn it. It really helps you do it by actually doing it. But I realize with this remote learning thing, I'm going to probably go a little quick for some of you. So it's there as an option for you, okay? And I think the most importantly, it sets you up for the final project, and probably in a lot of ways why you guys took computer science was to get into some of these graphics and visual type stuff. Okay, so I'm really excited to do this week with you. I think it's going to be fun to do these. I always enjoy doing the graphics at the end of the Computer Science 30 and even at the end of Computer Science 40S to really kind of show you what all this code you've been learning can now come together to really apply it towards some really cool project. Okay, so what do I expect from you guys this week? Well, one, do that survey. If you haven't done it already, do the survey. And if you need technical help, I expect you to follow some of the advice in the survey or let me know if I can help with anything. Log in and attend. Obviously, you guys are doing that now. You've logged in to the Teams meeting, so I can mark you present. Contribute. So if you have a question, ask, okay? And as I just pointed out with the example, do the example with me. If you can't quite follow along during the Teams lesson at the same pace I'm going at, do it after the fact. Slow down and do it at that pace, okay? If you have to copy and paste from GitHub, that's okay, but it's still a matter of doing the example to just try and get it working on your own, okay? What's really important is if you have a question or you need clarification on something, let me know. Don't just sit on it and wait and hope things are going to get better. Let me know if you're not comfortable doing it during a Teams meeting. Send me an email to do it later. Okay, so I see already some questions coming up. Let me get to those in a minute, okay? Now, if you guys are looking for work to do this week, like, because we're just going to do these examples all week, but if you're also wanting to do work for my class, you should, right? You should also be doing work. If there's anything from past units you still need to work on, yes, you should be doing those. Could you also be working ahead to your final project? Absolutely, those are things you could be working on. Could it be a challenge because some of your files are here at school and some of them may be at home? Or, of course, those could still be challenges, okay? So I saw already someone put that in the chat. That's stuff we can deal with. You guys are going to be back in those seats 1 week from now. So 1 week from today, you guys are going to be back there. I'm going to stay on that positive note that that's going to be the case. I'm manifesting that to make sure it happens. So we can deal with that next week when you guys are back to school. But if you email me and say, hey, Mr. Wux, I work on computer 12 and I have a file on my desktop. Can you log into my computer and email me that file? I can do that stuff too, right? So just send me an email if there's a file here at school that I could try to get for you. I can't promise I can find it, but I'll do my best to look for it, okay? Okay, so that's what I expect from you guys this week. That's what I expect from you guys for this course. Whew, okay, let me pause for a second. Does anyone have any questions or anything at this point just about the week in general? Just going to open up the chat as well. Okay, so there was the question, where are the templates for NetBeans? Well, when we do the GitHub thing, you can kind of grab those. I can sort of address that. And what about final project school stuff? So for you guys, maybe send me an email about those specific questions and I can help address it. Okay. Is there any other questions that I can answer? We just double check attendance before we go forward. 40S students, other than Tanner, I had everyone marked present. And 30S students, Ephraim and Evan, Tommy, and Khalid marked absent. Okay, so nobody had any questions. So what I want to do now is it's 11:18, so I got to keep my eye on the clock. So we have just a little, about half an hour left to get a good start on these graphics examples. Now, where I'm going to put these examples is into the 30S example that we've been working on. Now, if you're in computer science 40S, you can just add it to your 40S as well. Or even if you're in 30S or 40S, why don't we start by grabbing the example the way it is now? So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. It's always been an option for you. What you can do is from my main page, go to my GitHub page, which is this little icon here, or you can see it's also right here. Go to Mr. Wux's GitHub page. Okay. And I'm going to do this with you. The other option is you could just Google search this. Mr. Wux GitHub should take you to my GitHub page. It's not hard to find. Once you're on my GitHub page, you're going to look for Computer Science 30S. Now, I know for you in the 40S, you don't need all these examples because you already did this course, but that's the one I'm going to be updating from GitHub. So it might be good to at least have that as a starting point. But if you're in 40S, you don't need to do that. You can just build a new project for the example, or you could work off of your current 40S example. There's all kinds of different ways. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that Computer Science 30S, and then I'm going to click on this green code button, and I'm going to download this project right now. That way I have all of the example from everything from 30S, plus what I'm going to add on to it here now for these graphics examples. So download it as a zip file. Okay. Once you download it, depending on which web browser you're using, open your downloads folder. Okay. And unzip that thing by usually just by double clicking it and moving the folder over to someplace like your desktop. In other words, what you should have is now something like this, Computer Science 30S-Master. This is the entire example that we've done in the 30S course, from the intro unit to the methods unit to the arrays unit to the classes unit, all there for you, everything we did. And now you can just open that from NetBeans. So from NetBeans, you can go File, Open Project, and you should be able to find that project right on your desktop. That's how you can get all the example at once, okay? All right, pausing for a second. Does anybody need anything before I get started with the coding part? Because I wanted to have that just as a way to have you guys available for at least the stuff that if you wanted some of the code from the example. Now for you 40S students, you can do the exact same thing from GitHub for the 40S example, and then you can add the code in that way as well. It's up to you. I should pour myself a coffee. That's what I should do. Hey, look, I got a new cup for Christmas. I don't know if you guys can read that. It says, I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. My daughter got me that cup. I thought that was pretty fun. I also got a Marvel cup. I'm wearing a Marvel t-shirt today. So anyways, I'm such a nerd. Okay, everybody, coffee is poured. Okay, so let's get started with this 30S graphics example. I'm excited to get going. So if you go to Computer Science 30S and you go to main, these are the units that we've done so far. All these units which we've shifted over into methods. And we ended up commenting some of them out, and we could do that again. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a little more user-friendly. So I'm going to start by making a system out. And I'm just going to say, you know what, put a new line there. Computer Science 30S example started. And another new line character. So that's going to be an output right away that I've started this example. And I'm also going to put a little output at the end of this. Computer Science 30S example complete. So those little lines of output are going to go inside a main. Okay. But what I'm going to do now is present the user with options. This really isn't anything new that we've done. This is just some fancier code using the dialog boxes we already know. So I'm going to make a final, it's a little bit bigger, string array called options. Oops. And those options are going to be placed inside of a string array using the curly bracket system. So I'm going to see the examples, see the example of learning basic Java. So that was my unit 1. Unit 1 was us seeing the example of learning basic Java. Copy, paste. I'm going to see the example of methods. That was unit 2. I'm going to see the example of arrays. That was unit 3. And see the example of classes. That was unit 4. And then finally, of graphics and user interfaces. This is our bonus unit. It actually isn't required. So these are my options. See the example of learning basic code from unit 1. See the example of methods from unit 2. See the example of arrays from unit 3, or classes from unit 4, or graphics and user interfaces are bonus unit. And this is all the code examples that we already have. So I'm just setting this up as an array of options. Now I'm going to get the user's choice. Which one do they want to see? So string choice equals, and I'm going to use JOption pane dot, I'm going to show an input dialog. So this is really stuff all the way back to unit 1 where we did this. But now I'm going to use a fancy version of the input dialog, because now you know about things like method overloading. And now you know that there are multiple versions of show input dialog. And one of those versions, okay, of show input dialog involves an array, which is what we're going to do. We're going to say, okay, show input dialog null. The next thing is going to be the unit to view. So, whoops, that's what the user has to do. They have to select the unit to view example code of examples. Okay, I'm going to put a title on this thing, computer science. A comma. So this is just, again, me putting up a fancier version of the input dialog. So the text that's going to be on there, the title that's going to be on there. Then I'm going to put JOption pane dot plain message, comma, null. And actually, let me just move this down so you can kind of see all these options laid out one after the other, comma. Then I'm going to put my options menu, or not menu, but yeah, the array. Then I'm going to put options spot 0 as the first option. Okay. And then finally, right after that closing bracket, this is a weird one. The 40S students will know what this is, dot to string. Okay. So this is a very weird line. I'm just going to pause on this line for a second, especially if you're going back and looking at this video later. You want to kind of see how this line is set up. It's got all these parameters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parameters, and then this weird dot to string thing at the end. But I'm just going to run this real quick just so you can see what we just made. What we made is just a fancy version of this dialog box. There's the title, there's the text, and then in the drop-down menu, it has like the different sort of things that you can present from that array. Okay? All right, because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that to choose which to see. So I'm going to use an if statement for this. If choice dot equals what's in options at spot 0, that means then that they want to learn intro to Java. So I'm just going to move that line up to there. If they chose option 0 out of the array, then they want to see the learn intro to Java code. And then I'm just going to copy and paste this, turn it into an else if. And that would be learning methods if they chose option 1. So you can kind of see how this is going to go. Option 2, option 3. So option 2 would be learn arrays. Option 3 would be learn classes. And then option 4 is going to be the one where we're going to put in the graphics stuff. Okay, so we'll get to that in a second. But let's just see now what happens, right? So if I do this and I say, well, I want to see the code in unit 4. It would run the code from the classes unit down here. See the code from the classes unit? Okay. So I think that's a good way to have your example kind of run whichever unit you want to see here. Okay, so we started off that way and we got to here. And now we're going to change this line right here. Now the way I'm going to do this line is I'm going to now add another class to this project of classes. Okay, and the class is going to be called Learn Graphics. So right click, new Java class, Learn Graphics. Okay, I'm going to slow down and do that again because there's a couple ways you can do this. To add a class to the project, and I know both 30 and 40S students have done this. There's a couple different ways you could do it. You could click this button up here. You could go File, New File right here. But I think the easiest way to do this is to right-click on the package where it says Computer Science 30S. Or if you're doing this in your 40S project, or if you made a new one, just right-click, New Java File. Right-click, New, sorry, not Java File, New Java Class. So right-click, New Java Class, which is going to add a class to my project. Then call that class Learn Graphics. It's a class, so it starts with a capital letter. Click Finish. Okay. Well, if you're in 40S, it probably added a bunch of code, depending, but it'll look something like this. Okay, we'll get back to this in a minute. Now I'm going to jump back to the original 30S, or again, if you're in 40S or you made a new project, that would work the same way. Now, let me just show you what it would look like if you made a new project. So if you didn't want to download this thing off GitHub and you just went, I just want to make a Java application. This is my graphics demo I'm doing at home. Then really, you don't need to do any of the if statement stuff we've done so far. But you would still need to, in this new graphics demo, right-click, New Java Class, Learn Graphics, Finish, and you would have Learn Graphics along with the original one you have there, okay? So just showing you that you can do this two different ways. You don't have to incorporate it into the big example. Okay, so now we're gonna go back here to option 4, and we're gonna say, I want a new graphics. That's what you're gonna do, okay? If you're doing it from the brand new one, this one here, where you just have main, you would do the same thing. You would say, I want a new Learn Graphics to appear, okay? What this is doing is it's calling upon that other class to call upon the constructor method, which we don't have yet, but we're gonna write, of the Learn Graphics class. Now, again, this is stuff covered in the classes unit, constructor methods and objects and stuff like that. But whether you're doing it kind of the way I'm doing it, or whether you're sort of adapting for your own example, we now can just add code to this thing called Learn Graphics and put it in that way. Okay? All right, I am going to take a second now to update GitHub for this stuff. So save this. Again, save this. And we're now going to be going into Learn Graphics, and I'm just going to add a comment before I update GitHub. There it is. So Learn Graphics is a class object to launch a constructor about learning graphics. And I'm even going to put in the constructor method real quick. So there's learn graphics, and this is going to be our constructor method for when an object of this class is instantiated. So I'll have that there, and now I'm going to update GitHub. Okay. Okay, so that should be going up onto GitHub right now. So if you are having trouble with what I was doing so far, and you're like, oh, okay, I got to get this thing done. So now you should be able to go to GitHub, go into the folder there, and you should now be able to see that learn graphics file, which you can get. So if you didn't have time to do the constructor, you could just click on it, and you could quickly just copy and paste that constructor right into your example. If you're like, oh man, I missed that whole JOption pane thing he did, and my code's got a bug in it. You could also go back into Computer Science 30S, and you could now, right from GitHub here, go and grab that code out of main to kind of update it if you wanted to do it that way. So all of those options are available to you, whether you're in the 30S or the 40S, because now I want to focus on the graphic stuff specifically, okay? So we're not really going to come back to this thing anymore, this Computer Science 30S. It's doing what it needs to do. If I run it right now and I selected, I want to look at graphic stuff, it's just going to stop at that point because it's going to go to this code and there's no code there yet. So we'll get to that. Okay. Pausing now, looking at the chat, make sure no one's asking a question over chat. Does anyone have any questions for me at this point? Okay, let's keep going then, guys. What are we at? We got like just around 10 minutes left. So we get a good start at this right now to learn graphics. Okay, so here's what we're going to do to learn graphics. So in the constructor method of the learn graphics class, I'm just going to start with an output. We're going to start learning graphics and user interfaces. User interfaces is often shortened to UI. That's the shortened form of user interface. Okay, we're going to start learning graphics. All right, leave some space. And we have completed in graphics and interface. Okay, we're going to put the code. Okay, we're going to create class objects for different examples. We're going to create 3 of them. We're going to create a graphics 1, a graphics 2, and a graphics 3. But graphics 2 and 3, we're going to use that thing I've been sort of showing you guys a little bit throughout the course. It's a visual editor built into NetBeans. Graphics 1, we're not going to do that. We're going to do all the code ourselves so that we can compare it. Graphics 1 and 2 will look exactly the same. It's just that one's going to be made in an editor and one's going to be made by us writing code. There's going to be code in all of them, but it's how much code goes into each one of them. Okay? So let's start with graphics 1. We're going to need to add graphics 1 to our package here. Just like we added learn graphics, we're going to have to add something called graphics 1. So just like we did before, I want you to right click, new Java class. And call it graphics 1, capital G, graphics 1. Hit finish. Okay. Don't worry about the code. We'll get to the code later. Just have something called graphics 1. So you should see it in there. Okay. Then back here in learn graphics, you can say graphics 1. Graphics new graphics 1. In a line of code that looks like this. In a line of code that some of you might recognize not only from our classes unit when we did person equals new person, but even those of you that took the grade 10 course will recognize this as random equals new random. Okay, so that's all set up. Graphics 1 is set up. Now, to set up graphics 2 and graphics 3, we're going to do it a little bit differently. Okay? But for now, you can go ahead and copy and paste that line and change these all to 2s and 3s. They will give you an error. Don't worry about the error right now. We'll fix the error in a second. Okay, so you will have an error, but make that graphics 2, graphics 2, graphics 2, graphics 3, graphics 3, and graphics 3. So it's going to build a graphics 1, a graphics 2, and a graphics 3. It's going to build 3 of these things. Obviously, these have errors. Now, don't jump ahead and make them yet, because they're going to do it, like I said, a little bit differently. But the good news is this means that learn graphics will now be done. We won't have to come back to learn graphics. It'll be done at this point. We'll keep it open here for a second. All right. Here's the important part of how we're going to proceed now. We're going to do something very similar. We're going to right click and add a new Java file, but we're going to do it in a slightly different way. Instead of just going to Java class, we are not going to do it that way. What we're going to look for is we're going to right click and go new. And we're going to find this thing. It's called the JFrame form. Now, the word form, some of you will recognize if you took the Computer Science 20S course. That's what Visual Studio called it. It called it a form, and that's where you did your design on. Well, here in NetBeans, it uses 2 words to describe it. Form is certainly one of them, but the other one, it uses the word frame. Frame and form can be interexchanged here. They essentially mean the same thing. Okay, so let's go and do this now. Right-click, new, JFrame form. So right-click, new, JFrame form. Now, by the way, your JFrame form may not be third in the list like mine is. You might have to look a little further down the list to find it. The list will change its order depending on when you use these things, but this is what you want to find, JFrame form. All right, let's see this happen. Now, what do I name it? You name it graphics 2 with a capital G. Graphics 2. Then hit finish and watch as NetBeans changes its look to have like a whole sort of set of tools and stuff appear. This is going to be the visual editor that we're going to be playing with. This will also fix one of your errors here. Now graphics 2 no longer has an error. Then I want you to do it again. Right click, new JFrame form. Notice now JFrame form is second on the list. It's ahead of this one now. The way it works, it moves it up in the list when you use it. And now call it graphics 3. You're going to call it graphics 3. Hit finish. And you're now going to have a learn graphics, graphics 1, graphics 2, and graphics 3 open as tabs. You're going to have them open here in your project. And you should have no more errors as well. Okay. Graphics 1 is just code. Graphics 2 and 3 have this designer thing that we're going to look at. Okay. Now I'm going to update GitHub, but now that we're using these designer things, it's going to be a little different on GitHub because there's no real code to copy and paste, but I will update GitHub. And the reason I'm going to update GitHub, we're going to probably call it a day here in a second, is if you are really struggling to keep up with everything that I've been doing today so far on this graphics example, that's okay. Because now what you can do from GitHub, if I refresh GitHub and go back a step, back 2 steps, you will now see those graphics stuff are in there, graphics. But not only does it put a Java file, but it's put this thing called a form file in there. The form file is not really one you want to edit, okay? But nonetheless, what you could now do if you really wanted to have my whole graphics example is you could re-download this with now the changes I made over the last half an hour. And you can do that at any point this week during remote learning if you need that. But again, I strongly suggest you guys follow along with this example, okay? Now, we're going to get into all the cool stuff and adding all the stuff and drawing it, plus the coding and all that. That's definitely coming. But what you guys can do now is you don't need to have this file open anymore, Computer Science 30S. We're not going to be working on it anymore this week. We did everything we needed to do with that one just to get this little sort of menu thing up. So you can go ahead and close that if you want. You really don't even need this one open anymore, Learn Graphics, because it's just going to launch 1, 2, and 3 all the time, and we're going to work on those. So if you want, you could close that. But Graphics 1, 2, and 3 we'll definitely be working on this week. We won't really be working on Graphics 3 until the end of the week. Tomorrow, we're going to be working on these 2, Graphics 1 and 2, simultaneously. One's going to have code, one's going to have the designer, and we're going to go back and forth between them, okay? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now.